Life is good. I'm glad you're here. This is Faith Works Live. Rebecca's my name. It's been a minute since we have been able to catch up. Of course, it's been super busy with what's going on at the State House. And oh boy, there's plenty to discuss. Friend of the show and just all around awesome legislator, fighting force for liberty, for parents' rights, and for the rights of women and girls in our state. And we are excited to talk with her about some of the State House victories and get just the lay of the land as to what we should be paying attention to so that our representatives can, in fact, represent us well. Samantha, it's a joy to have you back. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always good to be with you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like we're simpatico in a lot of ways, even though like we don't go way back, but I think we go kind of deep. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And I appreciate the courage that it takes to show up at the State House and say, no, I'm going to actually stand by all those principles that I ran on and campaigned on. I'm actually going to govern. I'm going to stand by those. I'm going to like represent you exactly the way I said. So that's honestly very refreshing. Thanks for being like that.
Yeah. Hey, it's been fun. And it's been not so hard to just be like, yeah, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And as long as you're consistent and you're strong in your convictions, I think it's pretty easy to just stand with principles. So that's been my goal. And it's been a pretty wild ride the last 8 weeks at the State House as a freshman legislator. And I know you know all the things that are happening. Um, I guess the number one big victory that just came about was the gender identity bill, which repeals gender identity as a protected class in the Iowa Civil Code. So that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
And
and let's talk about why that was, because by now people will probably have heard about it. If they listen to the show, they're gonna know. But there's also been a lot of backlash, and that's kind of to be expected. There have been criticism saying that now people have a certain class of people has essentially been targeted, or that they don't have their civil rights anymore. And so I think it's really important to talk about what you actually did, why it is a victory, and in particular for creating just, I think, an equal system of justice. We want equal protection under the law, and that would apply to men and women, to male and female. So unless there's another gender out there, everyone does in fact have equal protection under the law. They're just recognized as either a man or a woman, and nobody gets special protection based on any other alternative identity. Do I have that right?
yes, I think yes, you do. Um, I think that one of the biggest concerns, anytime you touch the civil code, there's always concern that there's going to be discrimination. And really, um, gender identity was added into the civil code in Iowa in 2007. We were one of 20, well, we are a minority of states in the country that actually have gender identity as a protected class in the civil code. Now, it opened the door to a lot of things. So if you recall, we have legislation right now that protects women's sports and girls' bathrooms. But on all of those policies are at risk because we have gender identity as a protected class in the civil code. So it was a priority to pull that out because it didn't make sense. We were the only state in the country that had kind of that conflicting back and forth with some of these good policies and then having that in the civil code. So the time was right now to do it. And we will join 27 other states that don't have it in their code at all and never had. But what makes this unique is that Iowa was the first state to actually repeal it and say no more because it didn't make sense for the reasons I laid out. So it's not about discrimination. It's just truly about protecting women's sports, women's spaces, girls' spaces, our locker rooms. There's discussion about housing and those types of things for discrimination, but those really are protected under federal law. So there's really no concerns there. The other really cool thing about the bill was that it defined what a man and a woman is in code. And so that is something that I think a lot of people have been wanting for quite a while because we're seeing these lines of blurring the sexes.
Mm-hmm.
And we need some definite clarity into what those definitions are. Now, we know biblical truth tells us what a man and a woman is and who
Right.
we are, but we clearly needed that in our society as well. So there's clarity and truth. That's something I said. I was fortunate enough to be part of the subcommittee for this bill in the House. It ran through judiciary. And so I was able to make a few comments during the subcommittee. And, there were a lot of people in pain in there that were concerned about their own specific rights being taken away. And really, it's not about hate. It's not about discriminating against any one group. This is just truly about the truth between a man and a woman, and making sure that the legislation that we have in the books now stands strong and are not at risk. So I hope that kind of gives a little bit of insight. I will say that being at the Capitol during that week was crazy. We had quite a uh, quite a few protesters there, a lot of security just to keep everyone under control. I mean, it's their first right to protest, so that's fine. But making sure everyone stayed safe and calm, and went through the public hearing to hear all sides of the story. But ultimately, it passed with a large majority, and the governor did sign it. So it is law.
Yeah. And I say it's a victory for reality and for truth, even if you're not coming at it from a biblical perspective, which we are. And we know that God makes mankind, both male and female, in his image, equal in dignity, alike in dignity, but distinct in purpose. And I don't think any other human society has had an issue with this type of confusion that we have until like the last 5 minutes of human history, where now all of a sudden we can't be called women anymore. We have to be called, or mothers, we have to be called birthing people, or chest feeders, or some sort of ridiculous term. Like, no, that is not. I am under no confusion, sir. I'm a woman. I'm a mom. I am proud to be exactly that. No one else has been confused. Your great-great-grandparents were not confused. I think this is important. And again, we respect all people in general, again, being made in the image of God, but we're made male and female, and that's essentially no other option. And honestly, I think Donald Trump had the best line of the decade in his speech short here recently, where he said that our message to every child in America is that you are perfect just the way God made you. And to that, I say a hearty amen. And I think our laws help to, again, reflect reality, and we give people their dignity. We can honor them as God created them, and not in some sort of, I think, alternate reality or perceived identity that just literally does not exist. And under that perception, other people have been hurt. Girls have been hurt. Women have been hurt and have been deprived of their equal rights based on that. So I think the fairest thing is for everyone to just be recognized as exactly how God made them.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's really a great summary and why this bill was a victory. And I was just glad to be part of it.
Well, you were taking the lead. I think you're being humble on that, because you really were taking the lead on that. And I appreciate that you're willing to be out there. I think that can be a challenge for some, especially if you're kind of new around here, how to respect the system or the tradition, how to understand the best way to operate, but also to say, I'm here to do some things. I'm here to stand for something. And there's no point in like sitting on our hands and keeping our powder dry if we have the ability to make important moves. Why not? And now I will say I have been, I would say, troubled, concerned about not moving significant pro-life legislation. I don't think it's for lack of trying. In fact, you were a co-sponsor on a significant piece of pro-life legislation. And now that we're past funnel week, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that bill made it through funnel week.
No, I didn't. And I think that, why it didn't go through, there could be lots of different speculation. I think that the appetite at the legislator, we did this big gender identity bill. So to take on something additional, controversial, I'm sure doesn't sit well with others. Obviously, I didn't care. I was ready to roll. But I think that it's really important as leaders that we continue to push the envelope on all of that legislation every single session, every single year, and continue to gather more and more signatures and sponsors and people to sign on to those, because it is our duty as leaders to stand for what we believe, and what we believe the voters believe, and why we're elected in this position. And like you were saying before, I'm not going to waste any opportunity to share the blessings of life and communicate that means something to me. And we are, life at conception, and there's really no other way around it. So, as much as it's disappointing, it's also important to remember the silver lining here of we're still getting that message out. People are still talking about it, and the group of people that are supporting it are growing. And so it's
Hmm.
our responsibility to continue to push that envelope, so they know that, hey, the people of Iowa are speaking on this. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my response to it. I was disappointed, but you know, like I said, we'll keep pushing the issue. We'll keep forcing the conversation, and working with groups to do what we've done for as
Hmm.
long as we can remember, right? To stand for the unborn.
Yeah, stand for life. And again, we're talking about equal rights. Then every Iowan should have equal rights from the moment that we exist. And we exist, obviously, before we're born. I mean, you don't have to be crazy Christian like me to even say that. It's just simple, basic biology. So if we're on the side of biology reality, we ought to be protecting every Iowan and the rights of every Iowan. They should begin when we do. So I think it's that simple understanding and acknowledgement. It is hard for those of us who are so convicted. And so we see it so clearly to say, all right, we sent a bunch of not just, we sent a bunch of Republicans to fight for us on these issues and many others. So why is it that when the pro-life plank is literally in the GOP platform, why is it that we still don't have the votes or the political will or all of those things when we have a decisive majority and the conservative trifecta, as it's sometimes called? Why is it still so hard to be clear on this and to gain that ground that we've been trying to for literally my entire lifetime? So I guess the question that I have is, as you're up there, you're listening to the speeches, you're listening to people's concerns behind closed doors, how can we be more effective on this issue to rally support and to help legislators see that this is actually the way forward? This makes the most sense to really protect. We all know that they're babies. We all know that science understands. I mean, maybe there's some people that are still confused about that, but I think it is very clear where the side of truth, science, I mean, philosophically, ethically, morally, all of these things converge. And we can make that case very effectively. A lot of these legislators have already heard all these points, and yet we still have legalized abortion on the books, at least at those early stages. So, what would be most effective as someone like me that cares about this, that wants to pursue legal redress and the legal protection of every human being?
Well, I think number one, keep doing what you're doing to normalize the message, right? Because the more we talk about it, the better. We also need legislators in the state house that don't necessarily care about elections, but supporting the ones that are there right now in saying, "Hey, I got your back. Like, you're doing a great job," so they feel the compassion, because it can make, as a legislator, you can sometimes feel a little bit alone, like, hey, I'm going to get a lot of heat for this. Do my friends have my back? So always
Mm-hmm.
supporting those current legislators so they can remain strong in the time when they need to, speak up or be part of a speech that motivates others. Um, but also, like I said earlier, I think we need to change the culture around how we're looking at these elections. The pro-life issue can be a hard one for different legislators when they're looking at being reelected. And I get that, but I just, you have, your convictions have to be stronger than the outcome of an election. And I guess that's kind of where I sit, but I'm alone. I'm not necessarily alone in believing that, but there's not that many that feel
Mm-hmm.
that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to stand for my constituents and all of their concerns, not just the pro-life issue, but they elected a strong leader. They knew that I was going to have bold leadership on this issue and many other issues. Do they want me to fight for unborn babies just as hard as I'm going to fight for lower taxes, right? I mean, you can't be strong on some things and weak on others. You want a strong, bold leader in all conservative issues that protect Iowans. So we have to kind of think about it in that perspective. But what you can do, I guess, like I said, support those that are there now, to make sure they can carry on and be even stronger leaders, because people will join on when they see the crowd is
Mm-hmm.
like, you know how it is. People want to be followers, right? Not everyone wants to be a leader. Um, so
They
if
want to feel
everyone's
like
doing
they're,
it,
I don't even know because I wasn't a cool kid. I'm like the homeschooled weirdo for Jesus like my whole life. So I don't even know what that's like to be popular. But I will say I think there's been this kind of breath of fresh air even among people who are nominally conservative since November because it feels like, you know what, I'm not alone. The popular vote sided with reality in this case, and
Yeah.
it continues over and over again the shrieks of the more liberal neighbors among us. It really highlights, especially going back to Donald Trump's big speech. It goes back to how warm and fuzzy we all felt over that sweet little JT Daniels, for example, who all he wants to do is the brain cancer survivor, 13-year-old boy. It's like the hero that we all needed. He wants to be in law enforcement and he gets his dream come true. And everybody, like our heart grew 3 sizes that day. We could all gather around that, except apparently for House Democrats who were sitting on their hands for some unknown reason. But you know, they pray for them. They activate my prayer life. It's
Yeah.
just there's this feeling that we can be who we are again. We don't have to be ashamed of being normal, everyday, hardworking Americans that go to church on Sunday. We love our families. We're working hard. We want more of that money back in our paychecks, actually. Thank you very much. We want to be able to live our lives and to do what we know is true and right and good and to help our neighbors and all those things. Those used to be just plain American values. I think they aren't necessarily even conservative in as much as they were genuinely American freedom loving, quintessential to who we are. Going back to our founding, I think if we look at it in that way, it doesn't have to be partisan. It really shouldn't be. A lot of these issues, I think, shouldn't be partisan. They have been, sadly. But I would love to hear, Samantha, rant over. I'd love to hear more about some things that maybe are flying under the radar a little bit, because I know that you have to pay attention to all this closely now that it's your actual job. So what are some things that we should know about, maybe even on the parental rights front, on the education front, things that we should be supporting or being made aware of so that we can be informed and then converse with our legislators?
Yeah. Well, I will say with Fun Week just passing, there's a lot going on. So just to kind of give you guys in perspective, there were in judiciary, I sit on the judiciary committee, there were 59 bills that passed through the committee. There were 54 bills that passed through the education committee. I'm also on that committee. And I served on 26 subcommittees myself. So a
Wow.
lot happening. Um, Sometimes we're having subcommittees to have conversations to see where things go. Where do we need to work on stuff? But there was a lot of good stuff happening. I will say today there was a floor debate that did get through funnel, a bill that got through funnel, and it was debated today, and it was about the immunization exemption communication. That's a big sentence. It requires the school districts, daycare centers, and college campuses and universities to communicate to their students and people that enroll that they have an exemption opportunity instead of just getting vaccination. So
Hmm.
think about the no shots, no school kind of campaign.
Yeah.
That that needs to stop because that's not the truth. There is an exemption piece in code for vaccination. So that passed the floor House today, which is pretty good news.
Hmm.
Um, not probably not talked about that much, but something that is important for parents when it comes to transparency. Um, there's also a transparency bill coming up that really for public schools that excuse me that allows parents to see all the things that are being taught in their school, in their classrooms. Now, it goes beyond what the law already states right now. The law says textbooks, and this expands it to digital clips, videos, things like that, handouts, because I think we were kind of missing the boat on seeing all of those materials. So that's a win for parents if we can get that rolling forward. There's some talk about school nutrition. I don't know if your listeners have heard that, but looking at the meal ingredients that we're feeding our kids in public schools. If we want our kids to be healthy, we need to be looking at the food that they eat. So, removing those dyes and things like that. So that's kind of cool. There's also a bill coming out that allows for an elective course in scriptures, the Bible scriptures. And so that is basically, it's already allowed in public schools to teach religion, but I think that it needs to be spelled out more clearly to some of these districts so they understand that that actually is the case. And so this
Hmm.
course kind of gives that outline of those standards for schools if their school district wants to teach that. So that's good news. Um, Another really big one, and it's kind of been talked a little bit about, but repealing the obscenity exemption clause in our obscenity law.
Hmm.
Right now, schools and education, I want to say facilities like libraries, um, fall within an exemption for obscene materials. And that was originally put in many years ago as a way to, be able to teach sex ed and things like that. Well, as time has gone on, we know that from parents, and all of us have seen the issues with some of the books that our school libraries have. We've tried to address this in other different legislation in the past, but
Hmm.
this is really gets to the crux of the issue because it removes an exemption. So school libraries and public libraries would no longer be able to have obscene materials in their facilities. So that's kind of a big one. We'll see where that goes. It passed the funnel. It has an uphill battle, but I think it's an important one that people can be paying attention to.
Hmm.
So there's quite a few things. Like I said, there was 54 bills in education. Um, Quite a few in judiciary. We have quite a few eminent domain and property rights type
Hmm.
bills going through as well.
Yeah, that
So
would be a whole new episode. Like
yes, it
just
would.
even focusing on that because it's a
Yeah,
big issue. It's a big
yeah,
deal. But if you're not a landowner or farmer, if it's not something that has directly affected you, then it might not be something that occurs to you. But it is a big deal. Property rights are huge, huge
yeah,
deal. Parental rights, huge deal. I mean, until I saw this bill come up, and I've been it's been back burner for me, but I'm glad you brought it up. I want to pay more attention to it. I didn't realize that libraries had a specific legal exemption in the state of Iowa. And I guess I could understand kind of how they would, from their perspective, why they would want to keep that. But at the same time, what they've done with it has been heinous. So I don't think we ought to be. I mean, you and I have talked about this particular topic quite a bit in the last couple of years. That we've read examples of how they are using this to out and out produce essentially pornography and show it to kids and instruct them in all of these grotesque things that again it makes me feel uncomfortable as an adult woman with 6 kiddos trying to read it on the air. Like we should not be putting children in this position. And if those people who are acting as caretakers and teachers, that they should have our children's best interests at heart. They should not be subjecting them to this material under the guise of diversity or acceptance, or again that alternative identity. That's not loving children, that's not taking care of them, that's not protecting them. So I think it is appropriate, as a library lover myself, as a book lover myself, and as a mom, it's very appropriate that we educate our children in what is good and true and right and noble, and protect them from things that will harm them when they are children. So I'm now I'm all fired up. I'm going to be looking at those new bills and watching for debate, watching for movement on that as well. So from here, they would go to the Senate. Is that right? Are
yeah.
they
So,
working on the Senate
well,
side?
the way it works is right now, all those bills that pass the funnel, they'll have to be debated on the floor.
Okay.
And we just started that today, so Monday. So we're starting to debate bills. Once they're debated and passed, then they will go over to the Senate to do the
Uh,
exact same thing. So we're making progress. There's lots of good stuff coming up. So keep an eye out. There's a lot of really good education type bills that really pay attention to what parents have been asking
mm-hmm.
for. And so I'm just excited to be part of that process, have a seat at the table to make sure those things move forward. So
Mm-hmm. And you're doing a great job. Keep just make sure that your voice is in good stead. Thank you for talking to us after you have so many meetings. You've got more meetings yet today. It's really encouraging, I will say, to have someone like you and to have that core group of solid, principled men and women that are up there seeking actually to represent Iowa, represent those strong, again, American values for our kids, for our grandkids, for posterity, as the founders would say. So take this word of encouragement from me and our dozens of viewers out there that we really appreciate the work that you're doing, Samantha.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate being here today.
And people can stay in touch with you through the socials. I know you do a pretty regular legislative update as well. So if you're not following Samantha, is it email or just mostly Facebook, Insta? What's the best way?
You can go on my Facebook page, Samantha Fett, Iowa House, and you can sign up for weekly updates there as well. And yeah, it will be you'll get those, and we're pretty in depth on what's happening. So feel free to follow along.
Excellent. Excellent. We will. And God willing, we'll be able to talk with you again, catch up, and hear about some more state house victories. Thank you for helping to protect our rights and our liberties.
Well, thank you.
It's no small task, but we trust you. You can do it. Thanks so much to Samantha Fett. And again, there's a really core group of good, solid legislators, people who are even freshmen, sophomore legislators, making a big difference, standing for principle. You might not hear about it if it doesn't make headlines, but trust me, that's why we're here. So that you can know the people that are standing up, fighting for you. You can give them encouragement. I mean, they're people too. They don't want to hear criticism only if they've made a mistake or only from the side that doesn't know what a baby is or what a woman is. You know, they really do need to be encouraged, just like you would a friend, a coworker, someone who is working for us and with us. Help them represent you well. And you can do so. Pray for them. Pray for your legislators and get a chance to meet them. Maybe, just stop by the State House just because and say, hey, I'm here. I just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to do the right thing. I know this is a tough job and we have your back. So that's the message for today. Let's go forth and do likewise here on FaithWorks Live. Until next time, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to love God, to serve people, and to live free. There's no better time than now to stand for life. And you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they're dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House. They educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org. When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, every possible emotion goes through her head. Where can she go for help and for hope? She can go to Intervisions. Here in our metro, we have 2 healthcare clinics where she will find hope and help. From free pregnancy testing and STD testing to free ultrasounds, Intervision serves women and men with STDs who find themselves in vulnerable situations. They're completely free of charge because of generous donations from folks like you. And their medical clinics help their patients get all the information that they deserve, that empowers them to make life-affirming decisions. That's what they do at Intervisions Healthcare Clinics right here in Des Moines. Learn more at intervisionshealthcare.org.